QRC is one of the benefits to which you're entitled as an injured worker in certain circumstances. A QRC is a person, qualified rehabilitation consultant. That's a mouthful, so it's simply easier to say QRC. QRCs are registered in the state of Minnesota to provide assistance to injured workers. They fall under the rubric of vocational rehabilitation. They are the embodiment of that. And a QRC, sometimes it's easier to explain what they're not. A QRC is not a doctor. They're not a claim rep. They're not a lawyer. They're not a therapist. They're none of those things. They're a vocational person. And their job is to come alongside the injured worker and provide assistance to that injured worker. And they do that in two ways. I tell clients, QRCs wear two hats. The first hat is medical management. That's where they're going to go to doctor visits with the injured worker, where appropriate, not every doctor visit. They're going to get the germane medical information. They're going to get the records. They're going to get the restrictions. They're going to act as a liaison between the injured worker and the insurance company and the employer. And they will funnel that information around to all the parties. And QRCs are very helpful that way. Say you go to the doctor and an MRI of your knee is ordered. And you're an injured worker and you have no idea, how do you get an MRI of your knee paid for? Well, if you have a QRC on board, they get that order, they'll send it off to the insurer and say, sure, here's the order from Dr. So-and-so, will you pay for this MRI? So that's a very useful function. QRCs can get medical records faster than anybody else. I tell my clients having a good QRC on the file is like having a third hand. Conversely, having a bad QRC on the file is like wearing a pair of cement shoes. The second hat that the QRC wears is the vocational hat. This is the return to work piece. At some point following your injury, if you were off of work, there's going to be a return to work phase. That may happen without restrictions, in which case you go back to work, no problem. But let's say you had a back surgery and now you've got permanent restrictions in place that weren't there before. Let's pretend you work in a warehouse and you are a human forklift, for lack of a better phrase. All of a sudden you've got a permanent restriction and your employer may or may not be able to accommodate that restriction. So the QRC is going to work with you and the employer first off, hey, can we get this injured worker back to work at their date of injury job? Do we need to modify it? Perhaps the employer can't or won't accommodate those restrictions. So then the QRC might put the injured worker into job search, help them look for a new job. In certain circumstances, a QRC can send somebody back to school. We call that retraining. It's formal schooling that can last up to 3 years in length. The idea here is that the QRC can be of great assistance to the injured worker. There are some requirements for working with the QRC. Basically, you have to have restrictions due to your injury. The legal phraseology for that is a diminution in your earning capacity, but that's reflected in physical restrictions. So if you have a reduction in your earning capacity, you can work with a QRC, and the law gives you the absolute right to pick the QRC that you want to pick. The problem is that most injured workers don't know a QRC from a hole in the wall, and so that's where you're going to want to perhaps reach out to a law firm, Mottaz Sisk, and say, I've had this injury and I'd like to work with a good QRC. That's certainly a piece of information that we could supply. There are other areas or ways that you can get information about QRCs, but oftentimes the insurer will just assign one. And QRCs are supposed to be neutral. That's in the rules that govern their behavior. That said, in their heart of hearts, everybody leans one way or the other. And so that's why I think it's always wise that the injured worker make their own selection when picking a QRC. And you're looking for three things. You're looking for somebody who's kind, you're looking for somebody who's competent, and you're looking for somebody who's trustworthy. You don't want to bat 2 out of 3. Okay, well, why not? Because you can bat 3 out of 3. You want all 3 of those elements when choosing a QRC.